Hey guys, it's Griff here, and I wanted to put together a little bit of something for post-patch notes and the reveal. First things first, I want to talk about the Burning Witch and the Cast Iron Crit Volatile Dead. I think if you are really determined to play that build, you can go ahead and it'll function-ish. However, I would not currently recommend the build, given that it's been nerfed over and over and over again. I believe without incredible investment, you're not really going to have a good time with it. So let's just get that out there before people ask me, is it viable? It's not. I mean, I don't think it is. I'm not going to play it. Let's put it that way. All right, on to what people actually want to talk about, and it's Detonate Dead Ignite. So the first things first, Detonate Dead is fine. The minus 20, we lost 28% damage from Ignite, and with no actual like damage buff to compensate for that. So that is a straight 28% damage nerf, right? We saw that in the Balance Manifesto. Specifically, Detonate Dead with Ignite is fine. With Unearth, sorry, is fine. If you are using Detonate Dead with Spectres, that got gutted pretty harshly. So we have from the patch notes, the problem, certain corpses have far higher life totals than others, giving extreme survivability when used as a Spectre and very high damage of skills based on their corpse life. Duh. The solution was to lower the Spectre versions of monsters that have very high life totals and their life being brought down to match Kitava's Herald monsters. This will affect their corpse when created with Desecrate. I should have looked this up ahead of time. I believe Kitava's Heralds have about 360% monster life compared to the previous 800%. So this is a huge nerf to the easy, low investment Detonate Dead Ignites builds that have been popular lately. Desecrate is just not very good, and not in a very good place right now for those. Now, one thing I will say is Phantasmal Unearth gives a chance to produce a I forget what the actual monster is called, but it has 300% increased life, which is very close to the Kitava Herald level. And there is, you get like a 20% chance, 20 or 40% chance to spawn with those, which is pretty cool. If you combine that with the Ashes of the Star, this thing, that gives it a pretty good chance to spawn those. That'd be a nice, like, consistent damage for hit-based Detonate Dead or other corpse skills like Volatile Dead. So that's something to think about. But moving on. Also, Detonate Dead builds can gain significantly more damage by diluting the pool of desecratable monsters with high life specters because of how Desecrate selected monsters. So they also kind of nerfed how, you get Lithomancers and Stone Skin Flayers to give yourself higher chances of getting those high life specters. They just kind of gutted it. Now it's a flat 15% chance to spawn a Spectre corpse. So they got kind of double gutted on the Desecrate side of things. But again, that's for Desecrate. Now, this does mean it's probably not super League Start friendly. I wouldn't say you can't do it, but it's not going to be very League Start friendly compared to previously. Because like with Unearth, you need the Phantasmal version for it to really pop off. Because the quality on the Phantasmal Unearth is what gives you the increased corpse life. So, wanted to cover that. We lost about 28% damage. That is not a big deal. If my calculations are right, and they've been like wrong in the best sort of way, then like my DPS was probably close to 40 million on my min-maxed character, which is pretty insane. I mean, Kosis and Wave 30 Simulacrum going down in a few seconds, like there's some really good damage there. Losing 28% of that combined with just how tanky the build was, it's not a big deal. I think that is a completely acceptable nerf, right? To lose about a little less than a third of the damage, it's totally acceptable. Now, there are a couple of things I want to point out. Couple of uniques, right? Ashes of the Stars, Onyx Amulet. So this is really cool. I don't know. I haven't, done any number crunching on whether or not this would be kind of like a best in slot for the Detonate Dead Ignite. It could be, but not necessarily. But there is a possibility. It is, at the very least, would be very good, and as a unique, could just be a very solid option. We'll see how rare it is, how expensive it is, that sort of thing. It's going to be one of the pinnacle boss drops, so I presume it's going to be not necessarily readily accessible and probably expensive. However, let's take a look at it real quick. First things first, increase reservation efficiency of skills. Very nice. Like, that is by itself a lot of reservation, and that'll help fitting auras, not needing Enlighten level 3 necessarily to fit Defiance banner. That should allow to fit that in as well. So like that's a nice stat. Cool. +1 to level of all skill gems. Now this works on Unearth. We can get to level 30 on Earth on just the Hands of the High Templar gloves, if you recall. If you have a level 4 in power with +5 gloves and a level 21 on Earth, you can get to level 30, which is like where after level 30 it kind of drops off in effectiveness, because then you need 2 levels to get anything out of it. However, you don't have to worry about getting a 2120. If you're using this, you only need a level 20 Phantasmal on Earth. No need to value your gem, right? So that's nice. It also works on all of your auras. So like Determination gets a huge buff from skill levels. Auras, your curses, etc. So like this, very nice stat. And then what I want to really hone in on is the +19% to quality of all skill gems. Chris Wilson said this goes up to 20%. We're using Phantasmal on Earth, so this equates to another 40% increased corpse life. Now, how that compares to like an amulet that has 50% increased damage over time multiplier between regular dot multi and fire dot multi, I'm not entirely sure. However, I do know that is a lot of damage and makes this amulet very appealing, especially if you want to like mass corrupt them for maybe +1 curse or something like that. So definitely something to look at, to keep an eye on. This is pretty cool. All right. I also want to look at the Polaric Devastation Opal Ring. I'm not 100% sure this is something I would actually use, but at least if it's not expensive, right? That is kind of the key wording here. If it's not expensive, I could see using it. We don't have a convenient way to cover enemies in Ash. Like, yes, if you take the mastery, if they hit you, they get covered in Ash, like a percentage chance to get covered in Ash. So, like, that's okay. However, just getting cover enemies in Ash for 5 seconds when you ignite them is just, they take 20% increased fire damage, they get slowed, increased duration of ailments is good, it comes with some resistances, some crit chance to help with your LE overload procs, and it's an opal ring, so there's elemental damage. I think it's a solid ring, the only thing it's missing is life. Would I necessarily use it as my end game ring? I'm not sure. We'd have to crunch the numbers, but maybe I would at least consider it. And depending on the price point of the item, could be a very solid budget option. Speaking of which, Legacy of Fury got a rework. It no longer has I blacked it out, you can see here. No longer has a negative resistance modifier. So they took the downside of the boots and got rid of them, which is great because the downside of these boots is that they're boots and they're unique and they have no life. Like, just that is a downside. However, now they have a huge upside, and that is they scorch nearby enemies, which starts at 10%, -10%, and then you get the 30 to 50% increased effective scorch. And if you have any additional increased effective non-damaging ailments, that'll also affect those. So for the Ignite build, for example, this would work as like a filler intermediate pair of boots until you get like the faster ignites with the life and the movement speed of resistances and things like that. One thing I am curious about is the 30 to 40% chance when you kill a scorched enemy to burn each surrounding enemy for 4 seconds, dealing 8% of the killed enemy's life as fire damage per second. I kind of want to see how this plays out now that nearby enemies are scorched, because before the scorched ground was kind of weak in that it's just like a tiny little AoE and they had to be on it. Well, now there's going to be a radius. We don't know how big that radius is, and that could be really cool for clearing, not even necessarily for, the Detonate, Dead, Ignite, but any build that could utilize this, because Scorch is all elemental resistances, not just fire resistance. Furthermore, this change makes them fantastic for Animate Guardian. I have used these on an Animate Guardian before, but that minus res was kind of annoying, and they had to actually walk on top of the enemy for it to actually do anything. But now you stick it on the AG, and it's if you get a perfect roll, that's minus 15% to all elemental resistances. Animate Guardian for a skeletal mages build, for example, they have all the elemental damage types, and you just minus that resist. That's real solid. I think this will get used a lot now, specifically for Animate Guardian. But it could be good on any build that, if you don't need the life. And this is the little bit of text. Legacy of Fury no longer has minus 15 to minus 10%. All resistances, existing items can be updated. And then now has nearby enemies are scorched. So that's pretty cool. The new jewels, we have the Forbidden Flame and the Forbidden Flesh, and I guess you have to have 2 of them. So this takes up 2 jewel sockets, which is a real price. However, the upside is so huge. So imagine sticking to the Detonate Dead. Imagine you have the Detonate Dead Elementalist, except now you get Corpse Pact. That's 50% increased corpse life, which is a huge damage boost. Plus you get the shock and the chill from Corpse Pact, which means I don't have to take the shock ascendancy for damage because I'm shocking everything anyways. And then I can take Bastion of Elements instead, and now I'm immune to Reflect. I get that bubble, the Aegis, which is insane, right? Or you can get Mistress of Sacrifice, and then I don't have to take Glancing Blows, and I get more passive points as a result. You can get Profane Bloom for clear. I mean, you take your pick. You've got Malediction, which is fantastic. Take your pick on your ascendancy point. There's a lot there. You could also get Shaper of Flames, the Elementalist node, and just run as a Necromancer. That's also an option, if that's something you would prefer. That totally works too. I love this new jewel, and it adds a ton of potential endgame min-max customization to your builds. And in this case, I really just would love to have Corpse Pact for that massive damage and defensive boost. And the last thing that I really wanted to kind of point out, cast when damage taken loop builds, something I've always kind of kept an eye on because that's kind of like a tickling my fancy kind of deal. I've never specifically done a loop cast when damage taken build, but the cast when damage taken loop builds got huge boosts to their damage. So all the spells got increased in their damage, and a 50% or more increase to their added damage effectiveness. Which, when you're spewing out all of these low-level spells, your damage doesn't come from the spell. It comes from all the extra added damage that you have. I.e., you could have Martyr of Innocence, which gives you this massive amount of fire damage that just adds it to all your spells. Well, all the extra damage effectiveness just gave a huge boost to these builds. And then, GGG compensated these boosts by nerfing cast on crit, nerfing cast with channeling, etc. But they didn't touch cast and damage taken. Okay. So that's just something I wanted to point that out, because that could be something I might try this league, and that would be really fun. So overall, with the Detonate Dead, with Unearth. I think this, I don't know if I'm going to league start this. I probably won't league start it, but I will seek to make it like my second or third character while I kind of put all the pieces together, right? I want to get my Phantasmal Unearth. I want to get an Aegis Aurora. I want to get, the +5 helmet enchant for Unearth. Like, get all the pieces together and then roll it. I think that's probably the best way to do it. I don't know what I'm going to league start with yet. I'll figure it out tomorrow or the day after or sometime next week. We'll figure it out. Anyways, that's all I got to say about it today. Thank you guys for watching. If you like this sort of content from me, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button to help me appease the algorithm gods. And with that, we're going to insert a catchy phrase here, and peace out.